allow a few gentlemen the chance to introduce themselves first. We have just a couple questions to kind of start the conversation, and then we'll open it up for everyone to participate. So if you've been with us before, you know how to raise your hand or type in the chat box some questions. We'll call on you, and we put the number in there as well, just in case you want to chat and share your ideas. So without further ado, gentlemen, what I'd like to do is turn it over to you. Just for ease of conversation and facilitation, I'll just ask each of you to start introduction. And all right, Director Strong, go for it.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you all for inviting me to have coffee with you this afternoon. I am the Director of Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. I've been in that position 4 years now, and have had the pleasure over the past year to chair the board of Council of Advanced Hunting and Shooting Sports, and so that's been a fun ride as well. Of course, we look forward to hosting the next National R3 Symposium, not in May, but hopefully in August. So look forward to welcoming everybody to Oklahoma then. And I just look forward to this chat. R3 is a huge issue for all of us, certainly something that's very important to us in Oklahoma. As we face challenges, and even as we face very unique and new challenges that have confronted us in just the past couple of months. So look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, JD. Also joining us is Joe Bartozzi, President and Chief Executive Officer of NSSF. Joe, can you offer a snapshot of your organization?
Yeah, thanks very much, Sam. It's great to be here, and I appreciate you guys having me on. The National Shooting Sports Foundation is the trade association for the firearms and ammunition industry. We have about 9,000 members, and those are business members. That is not individuals. So we have major corporations that manufacture guns and ammo, and we have major distributors. We've got thousands and thousands of retail members. We've got many, many range members throughout the country, and it's our job to promote, protect, and preserve hunting and the shooting sports by means of outreach, training, education. We put on the SHOT Show that some of you may have heard of every year. It's our big event. Again, just thrilled to be here and appreciate the opportunity to talk on some of these important subjects.
Thank you so much. And finally, last but not least, Mr. Wiley, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure, Samantha. Hey, I'm just thrilled to be on this panel, and I currently serve as Chief Operating Officer at Ducks Unlimited, and I've been here a little over 2 years now. And my background, I served 30 years with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and so my background is with state fish and wildlife agencies, and my heart's still very much in that world too. So those of you that are with agencies on the call, man, I appreciate all that you do and how I'm sure you're all adapting to these challenges we're facing. But at Ducks Unlimited, it's been a great experience getting to know how the NGO world works. Very different. R3 is absolutely a critical component to NGOs like Ducks Unlimited, because our membership is largely, I think, in the neighborhood of 90+% hunters. And so we are very much, acutely aware of the need to maintain strong connections with the hunting community and hunters, and how hunters have always been and continue to be the strongest advocates for conservation from all different facets, whether it's writing checks and bringing money to the table. And a lot of what we do at DU is take those contributions, the generosity of hunters, and we leverage that. We match it with all kinds of other sources and partnerships. And then we go work in wetlands, and we do wetland work to provide habitat for waterfowl. And, of course, everybody knows when you do a good job with wetlands, it benefits everything. It benefits a lot of things. And so we're all about, connecting the dots with the hunting community and hunters. And with that, there's R3 is such an essential part of what we care about and what we're trying to do. But I will admit there's a different flavor to R3 working through an NGO than there is working with a state fish and wildlife agency, and I'm learning that, and it's pretty exciting stuff. So anyway, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, gentlemen. Before we continue the conversation, I just want to set the tone here. With COVID-19, we recognize that it's a sensitive situation for every organization in dealing with what you're dealing with. We've all witnessed and dealt with our hand of changes, and we think about each of you as you guys are dealing with that day to day. We posed some questions such as this in comparison to this time last year. Our participation trends in outdoor rec and your state up, down, or the same. And what we're seeing is that across the board, people are going outdoors more. So we recognize that with more people outdoors and with an initiative designed to recruit, retain, and reactivate, how do we keep those people engaged once COVID-19 passes? We all know that that opportunity is in the future. So what can we do between now and then to prepare and keep those individuals engaged? We've gathered all these individuals for that conversation. Recently, Director Strong wrote a letter to all 51 state fish and wildlife agency directors, and we shared that with them on Friday, highlighting exactly these points and encouraging a continued focus on R3 in the coming months. So this conversation is just, with the representatives of these organizations is to share in those perspectives and also highlight where we could go in the future. I find it convenient that during the Outdoor Wire, if you guys get it, all three of these organizations, Ducks Unlimited, National Shooting Sports Foundation, and Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, had bylines of increased support for the PAC or piloting first-time online options or trying new activities within their state to get people engaged. So you're talking to some of the organizations that have led the way in adapting just as much as you guys on the ground, and so they have a lot of experiences to draw from. What we wanted to do was allow each gentleman, if you could, just kind of give a snapshot of how your organization has responded to COVID-19. We've talked about the unique efforts. I kind of just laid the groundwork there. So feel free to just give us a snapshot on what you're dealing with and anything that stood out in that experience as well. And we'll just keep the same order of JD, Joe, and Nick, if that's okay with you guys. So JD, would you like to start?
Sure. I wasn't sure if everybody could see me just because I've never been on Adobe Connect. I've done about every other online meeting type, but Micah on my staff tells me something's new, that he didn't recognize me with all the hair. I just was wondering if anybody was paying attention because no hair. So that's one way we deal. That's one way we deal with what's going on right now. Make sure you got a sense of humor. So I'd like to say it's because I haven't been able to get a haircut in a couple of months, but it's not really that. Yeah, so the interesting times. I like to say for Oklahoma, we just seized the opportunity, really. Try to make lemonade when you're dealt lemons, so to speak. But certainly it's a great opportunity for us to take advantage of the fact that after the initial shock in the first week or two of all this, people were really getting cabin fever and trying to get outside and are interested in getting outside. So, I worked with Micah Holmes, who's I know on the talk today, and several others on our staff, and said, look, let's put together a campaign. We worked closely with our health department officials to make sure we were being responsible in our approach to it. But we started the Outdoor Always Open campaign really at the front end of all of this, and tried to daily serve up content on our social media channels and other things to give people ideas about things they can do outside, and it went beyond. We sort of pushed ourselves more than we have before to go beyond the traditional get out and fish or out and pop a turkey this spring, and got into it's peak time for foraging for morel mushrooms and all sorts of other things. getting out and identifying different species of critters, fish and wildlife, and log them into iNaturalist as part of the Oklahoma Bio Blitz for the month of April. And so, I think for us it was, making sure that we didn't let this thing completely rock us back on our heels, but instead take advantage of it and see what we could do to push it forward. And it's worked out well for us so far in terms of customer engagement. Trends are up and have been up throughout. In fact, they're well up over last 2 years, looking at those trends. And so it's been great. I'd like to say we had a playbook for all this, but we didn't. Like most people, we have been sort of fumbling around. But I'll tell you one thing, and I shared this with other directors, either on a CFWA call or an AFWA call. I can't remember which one, but I said, if you haven't done it already, make sure you log on or send your staff to the National R3 community, online community, because we found that to be a treasure trove for us of ideas that we could implement and put into action. So kudos to Council of Advanced Hunting and Shooting Sports and staff in particular for continuing to keep that going, and kudos to everybody I'm sure that's on this coffee talk today that has had a hand in serving up content on that online community, which has been just a huge help to all the rest of us.
Thank you, Debbie. And it's amazing how many people have been able to turn out new content, just trying things out. That sense of connecting with people seems to be driving them. And Joe, can you give us a snapshot of NSSF? How have you been responding? I know you have a unique perspective as an industry partner here.
Right. Well, the first thing that we noticed as the states started to shut down businesses to slow the spread of the virus is that they were gun shops, retail shops, and ranges were getting caught up in that as well. And of course, anytime you're dealing with a constitutionally protected right, such as the Second Amendment, we get a little bit concerned, and we keep an eye on these things. So we reached out to the Department of Homeland Security right away and said, look, we need a designation that firearms manufacturers, including ammunition manufacturers, retailers, and ranges, ought to be considered essential. The obvious thing would be, of course, the manufacturers are certainly providing guns and ammo for the military, for law enforcement. So we had to make sure that those folks stayed in business as part of the critical infrastructure of the United States. But then we saw right away the lines circling gun shops throughout the country where people were getting concerned and were very interested in exercising their Second Amendment rights for, to protect their family, protect themselves, get ammunition for whatever reason, go hunting or shooting or simply for home security. So we've been working with obviously with the obvious social distancing requirements and hygiene. We certainly didn't want that to be compromised because people weren't paying attention to their hygiene or their social distancing. But then we found that some places you couldn't have people come into the shops. Some states were cracking down on how many people can come into a gun shop. So we reached out to the ATF about how do we conduct lawful business, and the ATF responded with a letter saying you can conduct business from your parking lot or on the side of the road if you had if you have brick and mortar premises. And that made a huge difference because now a lot of retailers that would have had to shut down would remain open for business. So that was our contribution to keep allowing people to buy the guns and ammo they needed to participate in the shooting sports or to go hunting. Now, obviously, we've got other programs that we're still working on. The Plus One movement is a real big R3 effort of ours, and that is encouraging hunters and shooters to take one new person out with them to the range or to the field. And we launched it at the SHOT Show 2019, so that would be at January 2019. And since that time to now, we have about almost 600,000 pledges from people signing up to volunteer to take someone new out hunting or shooting. So that's been a very successful program for us. We got the range bill passed last year, which allows states to use less money to start the construction of a new project, a new range. Used to be 25% needed by the states to put them for the money. Now it's only 10%. So there's no excuse now just to put off building a new range or getting out there and improving an existing range. And then, of course, to partner with the payer program, some of you are familiar with that, where we have folks from the wildlife agencies get together to go to meet a manufacturer, the folks that are actually paying the excise tax that support habitat restoration, wildlife, and so forth, conservation efforts. Great program. I participated in a couple of those, and it's just wonderful to get to meet the guys from the state agencies and likewise to have them meet our folks from our industry. So we've been real busy. Everyone's working from home remotely, but we've been very productive in allowing stores and manufacturers to remain open and to keep pushing our message about safety, about the +1 movement, and partner with the payer objectives.
Awesome, thank you. It's definitely not something one might think initially about crowding of firearms and getting background checks, so the social distancing perspective is really unique there. That was a pretty cool perspective I didn't know. And finally, Nick, can you give us some snapshots on how COVID has hit Ducks Unlimited and how you guys have been responding?
Sure, Samantha. Well, we have a lot of different pieces of of what we do that were affected in different ways. One, on the good news side, a lot of our conservation work, thanks to some great partnerships with state fish and wildlife agencies and the Fish and Wildlife Service and other partners, we're able to continue a lot of our conservation work, and a lot of our effort on that side has been working with those partners to make sure refuges and state lands are open for us to continue to do those kind of jobs and the kind of work like, building wetlands, repairing structures, things like that. So there's a lot of good news on the conservation side, the work on the ground, the habitat work. I think we got somebody that's not muted. Some good news there. Of course, that a big part of what allows us to continue to do our work at Ducks Unlimited is our ability to match and leverage partnership funding and public funding with philanthropy and other sources of funding, corporate funding, things like that. And so our fundraising side of the coin is where we're facing the biggest challenges. And we have kind of a three-legged stool of fundraising. We have a strong membership support base. We've got in our development and philanthropic fundraising, and then we've got events-based fundraising. And I hope all of you have been to a DU event, a dinner, or some type of fundraising event where people get together and have a great time, and they enjoy raffles and auctions. And Joe, we move a lot of firearms too, and so those events are where we've had the most impact. Those events, we had Ducks Unlimited in April and May and June, March, April, May, June. We've had to postpone, reschedule about 2,000 events. And all the money that would flow from those events is not flowing. And so we've had to get creative. And kudos to our team. They've gotten very creative. Some of you might have seen we're now doing state-by-state online auctions. Still moving a lot of firearm inventory online. Again, it's amazing that this was new to DU, because before, to get a lot of our DU branded firearms and working through our partners in the firearms industry, you'd had to go to a banquet to get access to those, like the gun of the year, things like that, or certain artwork or certain other branded type items. You could only get them at an event. First time ever, available now through online auction, and people are actually, we've done it for 2 weeks now, and people are flocking to these online auctions, and they're willing to spend money on a firearm or other merchandise and wait to have it shipped at a later time. So it's really cool. I know that reflects a lot of support from the hunting community and the shooting sports community. So at this point, there's a lot of that still happening, a lot of creativity, a lot of things still flowing. We're still working hard to, make sure some of these things are sustainable. We're still not, getting back to where we were financially. So we're also dealing with some, financial challenges that we've got to work with. And but with that said, we're in a great place. We're surviving through this. And when it gets to R3 work, this was kind of a little bit of a slow time for us in R3. The tip of the spear for us on R3 work is our high school and university chapters. And of course, most schools have been shut down, and the kids are, dispersed. And so it's given us some time. We're staying in communication with our chapters at the high school and college levels. So we still got that structure. We're keeping that going. We're still looking next year to try to grow that program. We've got some real exciting funding opportunities there that are going to provide some sustainability and continued support for that R3 work we're doing. And when I call that our high school and university chapters R3, when I first came to DU from a state fish and wildlife agency, I thought, well, you mean you're having these kids raise money for Ducks Unlimited? Isn't that a little selfish? I mean, I was thinking that about it kind of in a more simplified approach. When I started meeting these kids and getting involved in these chapters and going to these big events, and we have a big leadership program every year here in August in Memphis. When I started seeing this and how this is kids, young people, forming chapters, getting involved, when you get young people excited about conservation and excited about raising money for conservation, man, you have them hooked. You have them excited. And then those kids will bring in other kids and form this social network. We call it peer-to-peer mentoring. And I'm so excited about peer-to-peer mentoring. To me, that is moving the needle, getting young people involved and connected to the conservation and hunting community in a way that I haven't seen in other places. We always seem to be in R3 looking for what really sticks, what really gets young people and others involved and keeps them involved and builds those advocates for conservation. This program, I'm excited about. It's working, and we want to grow it. And so I'm excited about that continuing through all these challenges.
Awesome. It sounds like a great opportunity. As we're talking about it, getting auctions online set up and everything and keeping just an adaptive perspective here, it's cool to see what has taken hold. And I think during our XCOM call last week, the general consensus there was that we are trying new stuff at a rate that's maybe quicker than we expected. In your letter, JD, you noted about Hunter Ed being online, going at a quicker rate than ever before. And so the conversation, we can turn it now to say, like, what might we do to keep the interest that we've gotten? I mean, we've hosted our first online auction. Are we going to keep doing those? We have these first-time gun buyers coming to the table, and we know we understand them. We have marketing content to share with them now, and our agencies are adapting. So we have opportunities to take advantage of that now. And I think retention was one aspect we really called out. So JD, I just wondered, did you have any perspectives on like what we might start or where we might look forward to in regards to R3, and maybe help the listeners and participants just start thinking down that road?
Yeah. So I do not certainly have all the answers, but what I do know is this is just like an amazing opportunity, right? Hate to try to spin this in a positive way when it's such a devastating pandemic that grips us, but that's exactly what it is. This is a recruitment and reactivation opportunity like we have never seen before. And of course, the great challenge will be, how do we retain all of this activity in the wake? And that will be our great challenge. I think, hopefully people are starting to sort of get up on plane and handle the tasks at hand. But I think this really is, the right time, as you put it, Sam, to think about what we can do with this long term. How can we sustain it And again, don't have all the answers for that, but I can just think of, some anecdotes. We've struggled with several things at Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation since I've been there in the 3+ years, almost 4 years that I've been there as director. One of them, as Micah and my staff can attest, I'm a big paperless guy, and there are so many archaic paper-driven processes around our office that it's what led to my baldness, made me pull all my hair out. But the what this COVID-19 and everybody having to work remotely, work from home has done is pushed us light years ahead of where we were in handling things in a paperless office, in a virtual office. So by the same token, this whole virus situation has handed us a much bigger share of our population that is all of a sudden interested in the outdoors. I had, my neighbor girls came walking over one day because they heard me making noise in the garage, and they started asking me questions about my turkey vest hanging up there in the garage, and what's that, and what's all that junk in there. And they've of course never been hunting and never been interested in hunting. And pretty soon I'm sitting down on the garage floor at a safe social distance, of course, from my neighbors, little girl, elementary school girls, and neighbors meandered over as well, and showing them all these different kinds of turkey calls. And it's just, amazing the opportunity that we have before us. And another thing that we've struggled with in our office is, and I'm sure other fish and wildlife agencies in particular are the same. We do not have authority over state parks, so we're solely, focused on hunting and fishing for the most part. But we've been struggling internally about how we reach out to new audiences and how we really tap into all things outdoors. And we've had quite a ruckus around the office talking about letting people go on the 1.3 million acres that we manage for public hunting and fishing in our state and let them pick mushrooms and sand plums and do some of the other things that they're interested in, even though it may not necessarily have a direct impact on our license revenue. That's a way to get people introduced and maybe work them into that funnel. And once again, COVID hit, and people are going outside in droves, and it's really accelerated light years. I mean, I would say we are now where we probably would have been 2 years from now when it comes to our staff starting to open up to the idea of helping and entertaining and facilitating all sorts of outdoor experiences, not just hunting and fishing. And so, there's a lot of silver linings here, but I agree. The great challenge now for us is to think about how we sustain it when life gets back to some kind of normal, whatever that looks like. But and people go back to their day jobs, and they become less interested or more time compressed, and don't have the interest that they have right now in getting outdoors.
Yeah, I mean, those are great examples, though, the perspective of people accessing lands in different ways and different types of people and not knowing the roles. I think we've heard a lot of states relating to those examples and trying to figure that out exactly. As far as your perspective, Joe, you said that you're interacting with your Plus One campaign is getting many people signing on. We know that there's a lot of interest from the new firearms buyers as well too. Is the retention aspect of interest now, or where are you guys looking to kind of take advantage of this increased
Well,
interest?
I mean, this is kind of an opportunity, I think, for people to recognize. And I'll be the first to admit that I was somewhat surprised by the reaction of the people that were going out in droves to buy their first firearm. Now, in large part, this may be due to personal defense or home security, whatever you want to call it. But I think there are a lot of perhaps fence sitters with regard to Second Amendment issues, and that would include, of course, hunting and shooting sports. But right now, I want to focus on the Second Amendment part of this, where there may have been some ambivalence until this thing hit, and we're getting anecdotal evidence and some direct evidence from our retail members saying that most of the people coming into their stores are first-time gun buyers. So what we recognize right away is, well, that's good. It may change some people's perspective about gun ownership and lead to more hunters and more shooters, which is a good thing. But also, I think it sends a message politically that the Second Amendment still has relevancy in the 21st century. Although some people might disagree with that, I think it's clear that that these people are interested in their Second Amendment rights. So what we've done is we've actually reached out with a lot of safety training materials, safe handling, safe storage, suicide prevention, things of that nature, because we recognize that although there is a lot of interest and people are getting outdoors where they can, there are still places where they still cannot. Certain ranges are still being closed because indoor ranges particularly can't practically have the proper social distancing. So there are a lot of people with first-time gun owners with new guns and no place to practice safe handling or learning about their firearms. So we immediately launched a number of video content and relaunched a lot of stuff we already had to try and remind people about safe storage. I'll be doing a webinar, I think next week, with the folks from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention on the fact that you've got people now that are quarantined at home, they can't get out, it's a stressful time. Oh, by the way, there might be guns in the house, and so we want to make sure that people know how to securely store their firearms so that we don't lead to any unfortunate situations with people that might be having some challenges right now. So that's something that we've been working on, and now this gave us frankly a big sense of urgency to launch this stuff and more quickly and in different platforms than we might have ordinarily done. We were fortunate in that about 25% of our workforce is working remotely all year. That is, we've got our office in Connecticut, we have an office in D.C., but we have people that live in 13 different states. So we had the technology that we were able to kind of amplify for the rest of us that are now working from home, and that made a big difference in our ability to get up and running very, very quickly because we're kind of used to it. When 25% of your workforce has to work remotely anyway, you learn about the best practices for types of meetings and remote call-ins and things like that. So we were kind of ahead of, I think, luckily ahead of the curve from most companies. So again, we're looking at it from a lot of different perspectives, but really safety right now in training these new folks how to handle their firearms safely and store them properly until they can get out to the field or to the range to get some real good hands-on stuff by instructors at these ranges.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge aspect of it, and the safety component. We'll get the link for the webinar for next week as well if our participants want to tune in. Thank you for sharing that. And I guess no organization will be able to respond at the same rate from having people on the landscape at an increased number to more firearms in hand. There's an aspect of this as well, Nick, that maybe you could touch on about volunteers and engagement. A lot of our R3 culture is based on our mentors and people just participating. And as a nonprofit, you guys thrive in that atmosphere too. So what is going on with Ducks Unlimited, and how have you guys been responding there?
Well, the key we've seen for keeping the energy and enthusiasm of volunteers going is to communicate. I mean, you can't over communicate right now through whatever forums. But people, as we've already talked about, people are really, because they're sheltering at home for the most part, they're watching the flow of things on digital media and other, internet and electronic channels. And so we've really ramped up, social media communications and other forums for reaching our, membership, volunteers, supporters. The cool thing I'm seeing is the volunteers are just like, everybody's ready to run. They're anxious, like, what can I do? Give me something to do. Help me see something, and they're ready. Our volunteers are ready as soon as we see these reopenings occur. They're ready to start running with events again and pushing the envelope as much as they possibly can. So it's, to me, the key here is just keep, and particularly now that we're kind of turkey season starting to come to an end, and we're in this period where summertime, no hunting season's really going on. Just keeping that enthusiasm and attention on, on why we love what we love, and keeping people looking forward to, a brighter fall. And I think the energy's built up, and it's gonna. I'm optimistic that with all this, everybody's thinking about how can they help and get out, and I think when things do start opening up, we're going to see a lot of opportunities. You heard JD talk about, and Joe. I think we need to be ready to seize the moment on a lot of this energy and opportunity, and I think a lot of it too is going to, in the R3 world, as people sit around looking for, they're tired of playing video games and all that stuff. What more can we do? And I think we're going to see an awakening, and I think we all need to just be ready, leaning forward to capture that.
And that's an awesome point to lead in the conversation with the group too. I mean, all three of you have said that you've moved really quickly with your organizations to respond immediately, get things rolling out. JD, you said 2 years quicker and ahead of schedule. And Joe, you commented on the content and more online delivery with you, Nick. And so within our group, go ahead and share some of your perspectives on what you've done differently. We'll pose one more question to the group, and you can start to put your questions out there too. And we've captured the idea that there's more people outdoors and there's opportunity right now. Do you see any challenges, gentlemen, in trying to adapt to the maybe new normal that we're going to come out and see on the other side of this? And also minding, the different restrictions lifted and everything like that. But what might be like some of those challenges that we might think about now so that we can make sure we're ready, Nick, as you described? Maybe JD, do you want to start?
Yeah, so even though I said we've, I think, moved light years ahead, we're still in a little bit of a bind in terms of, because we weren't fully prepared, having everything that it would be good to have on, in terms of online content, ways to more effectively communicate electronically. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've got a great following on Facebook. We've got an email listserv that Micah and his staff maintain that have over 600,000 subscribers that we push content out to weekly. But if you put truth serum in us, we would say we could do more. It would be nice. So I think who knows what the new normal is going to look like. Maybe things will get back pretty close to normal. Maybe things will be drastically different. I don't know. But one thing's for sure, this whole thing has shown us that you cannot place a high enough priority on being able to connect with your people in multiple ways, whether it's staff. Initially when this hit us, we were scrambling to figure out how we can all work remotely and stay in touch and communicate and make sure the job's getting done. But the same is true for our customers, our constituents. We now have accelerated our efforts to improve those multiple lines of communication, in particular, having things online. And thank God, a year ago, we went online with a new online licensing system, because I can't even imagine what we'd be doing right now, how we'd be scrambling right now if this hit us 2 years ago when we didn't have our fully online licensing system. But it's things like that you take for granted, that you don't prioritize. And, I mentioned it earlier, alluded to it earlier. I think our other great challenge will be how can we keep people engaged? How can we retain as much as possible the biggest chunk of this growth that we've seen in outdoor interest? I mean, we've got increased sales in hunting licenses, turkey licenses right now, fishing licenses, and this is well and good, but how do we keep that from dropping back down to the levels that we had before? To me, that should be our number one challenge that we look to take head on right now, because before COVID hit, this council was created 10 years ago for a reason, and that was because all of us saw the national trend sliding downhill and going off a cliff in terms of hunting and shooting sports participation, and that has turned around in a really fast way over the course of the past couple of months here. And so it's a great opportunity. We just have to take advantage of, figure out how to make it last. And that was the reason for me putting the letter out there to all the directors. Look, everybody's going through challenges. We're here for you, but now more than ever, R3 should be our priority. And now more than ever, we need the council, we need the online community, we need all the people on this call and those that weren't able to tune in today that are our experts in R3 and marketing and outreach to really double down and help us figure out how to message it and continue it and make it last and carry us into what I hope will be a new boosted level of participation in hunting, shooting, and fishing.
Yeah, I mean, the retention aspect in keeping up with the new statuses of content engagement will be a challenge. Gordon Batchelor mentioned that the mixed messages between states has been a challenge, but having your staff able to connect with your peers at the level of which you described, I think, is similar to some agencies, but not all. So that'll be a really great opportunity for people to lean in and keep the conversations going once COVID leaves. Joe, what are your perspectives from industry? I did want to share one article. I'll post it in the chat box. It was shared by the RV Association, and then it was commented on by the marine manufacturers, and it was talking about the types of customers that are coming here. And you've hit on that as well, too, and how we engage them with safety. But they basically said there's a new segment of type of customers out there, and we have to figure out how to serve products to them. So it's a trend on many people's minds. What do you think the challenge will be for us moving
I would certainly
forward,
echo what JD was
perspective?
mentioning. Is certainly the opportunity to get messages out in a variety of ways is important. But I would go back from my part and say, even on a more basic level, to me, is I'm concerned about how do we get back to the human interaction once this thing is over. Right now, there's separating fact from fiction with regard to this virus is very difficult. Even doctors disagree on the best way to approach this thing. And I saw the post here in the chat box about, one state has opened for fishing, one state is closed for fishing. We see that with hunting. Some states are open for hunting, some states don't have any out-of-state hunters allowed to come in. So there's a lot of things going on here. But at the end of the day, like our +1 program is really a mentorship program. And that means taking somebody physically out to teach them how to properly handle and shoot a firearm, or how to hunt, or to participate in any of the shooting sports. So, I'm concerned that we will have lost the ability to interact face to face with, for example, just take Ducks Unlimited. Their banquets are phenomenal. They're great ways for people to get together, to talk, to brainstorm, to kind of engage in a common cause. And without those events, we lose something. We all lose something in the advancement of our passion and our sport. So that's my biggest concern, is when do we get back to people not being afraid to shake someone's hand, reach out and talk to somebody, take them out in a duck blind, or take them out, on a turkey hunt or what have you with a guide. So I'm waiting for that. I'm actually waiting that to kind of get squared away with science rather than, opinion and politicking. So that's my concern.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I didn't think about it. Recommendations on proper mentoring approaches as we head into the fall hunting season. I think I've seen some of our partners put it out on, turkey hunting, and WTF probably had some stuff I can think of, but it's a really great perspective. How do we keep that going, and how do we engage that human element? Thank you for that. And as far as Nick, your perspective, the challenges, we talked about the volunteers being ready to roll. What do you think the challenge will be then, if we have the people ready and the
Joe,
outlets there?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Joe nailed it. Getting back to this human-to-human interaction and figuring that out, and being nimble and adaptive as we see these doors open, and as we develop best practices for how to do mentoring and how to do gatherings, small gatherings, larger gatherings. We're already doing a lot of brainstorming on what our events would look like. We do a lot of things that are tailored around waterfowl hunting and getting people into blinds together from, our collegiate chapters. Those young people are constantly kind of inviting new people to go duck hunting. And so how do we encourage and foster that? And watching the science, but the other thing the challenge that I think we're kind of hoping will help in that regard is it just seems to me like that this has brought people, you kind of rely more on your friends, your family, the people your local community. If your local community starts getting comfortable getting out there, your friends, people that you know and trust, those are the people I think we're going to start, bringing back together and getting out into those settings together in smaller groups. And that's what I think we're going to start seeing and leveraging. I honestly believe the community we work with we generally, and I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, but generally the people in the conservation and hunting community they're very independent. They're very, they're ready to run, take a challenge and charge the hill. They're ready to get out and do things. They're always leaning out to get outside and to do cool stuff. And I think leveraging and harnessing that spirit in a smart way. And to me, the biggest challenge is if we lean too far and we open up too fast and we get one of those, backlashes in the virus outbreak, my biggest fear and the biggest challenge I think we got to avoid is our community triggering one of those big, a big outbreak somehow with something we do, and that getting media press that throws a big wet blanket on reopening and getting people outside. So we got to be really smart and thoughtful about that, and nimble and adaptive, and also recognize that different parts of the country, we're seeing this all over. Different states, different cities are preparing to open up in different ways and at different scheduling and at different, different components. And so we got to be just, we really got to look across all that and figure out how to adapt to those different environments as far as opening up. So those are, to me, what I see the big front and center challenges, because we really don't know what the new normal is going to be. I think we believe it's going to be different. We believe we've got to have things in place to make people comfortable gathering and following the science and all that, but it's going to be different. I don't think nobody believes we're just going to turn a switch on and go running back to the way we were.
Yeah, I think that sentiment is there. And I mean, we're a community based on science too, so I understand the perspective of seeing the good science to help us make the informed decisions. The idea of like local communities, like you're talking about, might be a strategy that the archery coordinators at the state or regional level could work with. Maybe if they have, a county by county approach that's opening up, they can reach out and try to manage communication in that regard. I know it's going to be a challenge as we move forward. You guys have given us some really great perspectives, and you're triggering a lot of different comments in the chat box here too. Ellen from Kentucky has shared a lot of great ideas. She's highlighted how they've offered their online Facebook Live presentations from the Salado Wildlife event. And she's also offering an idea about the messaging being around self-reliance. And Nick, maybe this plays into it a little bit of what you shared. The importance of hunting and fishing for meat because there was none on their store shelves. Folks got a hard taste of reality with this pandemic. And, that's a point that hasn't come up yet. And we've seen people going outside for stress relief and purchasing firearms for security reasons. But the idea of interest in food, I actually had a friend reach out to go participate on a hunt for a food bank on damage control tags because it was a source of meat when the factories were closing down, and that was an opportunity. Have any of you seen an increase from the food side? Maybe JD, you guys had mentioned about finding foraging on public lands. Has there been other inquiries about the food aspect?
Yeah, I don't know that I can think of an example of, I'm sure it's out there and maybe it's sort of latent. And of course you can, if you kind of observe conversations that are happening on Facebook and in other forums, you might see people occasionally bring up or joke even about the fact that everybody else is worried about the grocery shelves being bare and I'm, putting fish and turkey on the table daily but I think it's like I said in the chat box, I think it's an interesting angle that we really haven't, at least here in Oklahoma, pushed, other than, like I mentioned, we did sort of put out there some tips on how people could go out and forage for mushrooms and possibly a few other things. I think that's a really strong angle that Ellen has teed up there, at least from my perspective, that we could probably push a lot harder than we have been, and that probably would get quite a bit of traction.
Yeah, I would agree with what JD is saying. Sorry, Sam.
Yeah, I'm seeing the
No, I would say I definitely agree with that. I think self-reliance comes in a couple of forms. Of course, self-reliance in the form of personal defense, home security. We're seeing an awful lot of that right now, but it has certainly crossed the mind of many of our members that getting out to the woods to supplement your ability to get to a store is certainly people are thinking about it. I did an interview with somebody this week, and that question came up. They're hearing it where they are, and certainly anecdotally we're hearing it as well. So the self-reliance angle, I think, is huge on a couple of different levels. So I certainly agree with that comment, and I think we need to make sure I don't want to use the word exploit, but I mean certainly make sure we get that message out there in a carefully crafted way.
For sure. And Rob Southwick shared a great point. He said there's work been done by NSSF that looks at these new audiences, their interests and hesitation. We know from working with target audiences and everything is that the best opportunity is to meet people where they are. And as we continue to learn more about the people taking to the field for different perspectives, research and different tactics will help us connect with them. Zach Thomas shared a question that I'm going to read it. You guys can probably read it in the chat too, but it says, I know license sales have been up across the country, but I'm wondering that since we know that outdoor recreation is such a social activity, how do you think, if any, effect the COVID-19 pandemic has had or will have on participation? Realize most hunt, fish, etc. with people in their household, but also fish with friends, guides, and everyone from different households. So I guess it's the idea, maybe, Nick, of what you were chatting about human interactions and the mentoring. but if there's any other impact on recreation beyond our families and households that we might consider. I'm not sure if there's any other comments there.
Well, I want to share. If I may, Sam, I want to share this. So
yeah.
One of the big unknowns are the economic impact. And I think there are going to be challenges with economic impact. And I think we are, from state agencies to NGOs to industry, the firearms industry seems to be in a good shape right now, but I think we got to look longer term. And I think longer term, there are going to be some lulls in funding, and some, license sales might be strong now, but as the people that buy this merchandise and that buy these licenses and that pay for conservation, as the economic impact start hitting home, if this thing endures over many months, there's going to be, I think, a shortage of people. People are going to be in an economic situation where they're not going to be able to pay for trips and to do things that they might have otherwise been able to do in a strong economy. So I think we've got to be thoughtful and prepare for the challenge of just basic financial challenges down the road as well.
Yeah, for sure. Some of the conversation on the chat is highlighting that too. It's a generational impact of COVID, and not just financial, but also on the perceived impact to different generations. For instance, if a significant portion of our licensed buyers right now are of a certain age category that happens to also be a high-risk category, they might not want to go out and travel as much. So initial sales, like you pointed out, might be up, but what are those higher sales, where are they coming from? Are they coming from different cohorts? And how maybe can we understand that better moving forward? It's a great point. Just understanding those generational changes and the impacts of finances and stuff. Definitely a complex problem we're looking at here as we talk about it. So we'll give one more last call for conversation and for questions. And while we do that, gentlemen, I wondered if there was any kind of final questions or thoughts you wanted to share with the group. Maybe we'll call it closing thoughts, whether it be motivation, encouragement, or
well, and now that I got myself off mute, I would think after a month and a half of doing this, I would quit making that mistake. But I was going to say, on the heels of what Nick just mentioned, being in definitely the financial impact's huge. The economy overall is in a wreck right now, and it's especially acute in Oklahoma because we've got the double whammy of the economic downturn that everybody's seeing, plus a significant depression in oil and gas industry and activity, which is our number one industry in the state of Oklahoma. But again, going back to kind of the yarn we were spinning a little bit ago, if we talk about the self-reliance benefits of hunting and fishing, maybe the downturn in the economy presents a silver lining for those of us engaged in hunting and fishing, because it is in some ways, many ways, a opportunity to have some relatively cheap recreation and relatively cheap way to put meat on the table, unless you spend way too much on guns and gear, and like I do. But so closing thoughts, and I'd be happy to stick around and answer any questions from the others if there are any, but I would just say, as I said to the other directors, now more than ever, this work that we're engaged in R3 is critical and vitally important, and I have no doubt that the folks that are on this call today and the folks that are engaged in our R3 community are up for the challenge. And just know, I can probably speak for most directors when I say we're all struggling and scrambling to figure out the right path forward and how to deal with this. But as an R3 practitioner, I want to encourage you all to strike while the iron is hot. I mean, now's the time to hit up your directors and your chain of command about implementing new and creative things and putting a bigger priority on this and spending more resources on this, because it is a golden opportunity. And of course, I'll continue to do what I can as a fellow director to encourage my fellow directors to strike while the iron is hot as well. But I think this is typically the most creative bunch of people that we have within our Fish and Wildlife agencies, and I'd say let that creativity run amok and come up with all kinds of new and cool stuff for us to implement, and let's get it out there and make it happen.
I love the advice, and I did a quick run through of the people that remained with us, and there's a lot of archery coordinators here and people that work on it that have that direct opportunity. So huge advice, ladies and gentlemen on the call with us. Joe?
Yeah,
What
just
might
a
your
quick
thoughts be
quick
for your
point.
final-
While
final
nobody
point,
could have
your final
anticipated
words of
this type
encouragement,
of
whatever you'd like to
impact
share.
on the world and of course the United States and its economy, I think the fact is we can perhaps learn from this that there are more ways to engage people than just the traditional way. There are ways we can anticipate and prepare for other situations, and perhaps allow us to think more creatively and somewhat outside the box. I would also remind the folks that are on the call that the range bill that was passed last year does allow the states to put up less money for these programs, and there are public-private partnerships, that is, private companies in our industry that would be looking for perhaps a state agency to partner with to either build a new range or to build some type of accessible develop hunting land or things like that. So don't be afraid to think outside the box, to reach out to the industry, and you can come through through the NSSF or through the council, who has several industry members on its board, but to try and hook you up with folks that might be of like mind to help develop opportunities for the future with hunters and shooters out there. So we certainly stand ready to assist with the R3 efforts. We are doing quite a bit of research, and as Rob Southwick mentioned, we are funding reports and understanding new ways to reach our members and our customers through different personas. But so there's more than one way to skin a cat, and I would just encourage you to stay in communication, stay in contact with private industry, and allow us to brainstorm with you guys. So again, thank you all for having me. This was really a great event, and I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. And a great point about the private side of it. Nick had highlighted that different types of industry partners, and sometimes we just glaze over and say industry, but different industries are dealing with this in different ways. And the idea of ranges in other shooting sports programs through the summer months is something we've keyed in on too. So, National Shooting Sports Month is coming up. Zach Snow and your staff have been engaged, and Gamoff as well. And it might be an opportunity for us to share more content in the coming weeks to help build on that momentum as we look forward to the warmer weather and opportunities. And Nick, what might you want to share?
Sorry about that. Yeah, so Shooting Sports Month is August.
No, go, Joe. Go.
Go ahead, Nick.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nick. I'm done.
And Nick, what might be your... Go ahead. Okay. Nick, what might be your final thoughts you want to share?
No, I echo a lot of what those guys, what Joe and JD have already laid out. Times of crisis like this, I got great confidence in our community, the creativity, the innovative thinking. I think there's going to be this pent-up demand for the human-to-human interaction and getting people together. I think we need to really think about how do we seize the moment. And now is not the time to pull our head in and, just kind of duck our head and think we're going to just weather this. Now is the time to seize the moment and really push new ideas and new opportunities that really, keep people, excited and engaged and moving forward. So I think, and we've got, you got people's attention right now. I mean, there's not as many distractions in the world right now. And so you're looking at this thing and being thoughtful about the opportunities. JD talked about it. It's just seize these opportunities and and really take this opportunity to move things forward and to come up with new ideas that can connect the dots and get people outside and get people engaged. So I think there's, you know, a lot of upside, a lot of downside, a lot of upside. So I'm focusing on the upside.
As we would expect you to. Thank you so much. I think the idea of innovation in this time, it's cool. We did a happy hour with the R3 coordinators a couple weeks ago, and that perspective in that theme was pretty much the theme of the conversation for an entire hour. Is about how R3 coordinators are taking advantage of it and swapping ideas because they're experiencing exactly what you guys are sharing. There's opportunities right now. We are designed by our job to be responsive. So how do we engage there, and how do we make the moves that we know will pay dividends in the long run? So thank you, gentlemen, so much for your time and for your perspectives. We know to take an hour out of your day, especially during this time, is a lot, but we really appreciate it from both the council and from the R3 community as a whole. We'll copy any other questions that we get submitted, and we'll maybe source it by email or share it with the R3 community in the follow-up. We'll download this conversation and post it to YouTube within 24 hours. And we'll stay tuned, ladies and gents, for the next R3 coffee hour that we'll host. You'll see one next week on Wednesday, probably at 2 o'clock. It's been our trend.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll
Stay healthy and safe.
join us then, and thank you all for joining us.